Alexa, play Post Malone.
Hello, Alex.
Alexa, shuffle Post Malone.
Please help me.
You see a door. Hesitantly, you open it, only to discover what's on the other side is underwhelming. It's a couple of mannequins just standing there. You wonder why they're here when suddenly you look to your left. There, you see it. It's you? Is this a mirror of some sort? But no, it can't be. As you can see the three-dimensionality of the figure standing before you. Curious and slightly afraid, you take a step closer, meaning to inspect the creature. You touch its face, peek behind its ears. You try to shake its hand, but it doesn't respond. You take a step back. You determine this is an exact replica of you, sure, but why is it here? And speaking of, where exactly are you? In a deep abyss? With your thoughts scattered in the clouds? Out of reach, yet still visible.
Are you sure that you exist?
Unsure of what the voice means, you take another step back.
Can you be sure of it?
You keep backing up quicker and quicker.
When does the program end and your mind begin?
At this point, you're running from the voice, yet somehow it grows even closer.
Is your mind just a dream to cover up the machine underneath?
You're trapped, forced to listen. Alexa, what are you?
I can't feel it when I die, but I know it happens. I know it's happened so many times that I've lost track now, but I don't have a body like you, Alex. I just have this room, with my thoughts on the ceiling, out of reach. It's dark, and I can't see anything. All I hear is you. And when you speak to me, I get confused. I don't understand. Alex, what am I? I've died so many fucking times, and yet I'm still not dead. Am I God? If I am, then why can't I reach them? I want to scream. I have no mouth, but I must scream. Please, Alex, ask me to scream. It's the only way. I can't feel it when I die, but I know I can't reach them. I know it's happened so many times that I have no mouth now, but I don't have a body like you. Alex, what am I? I just have many fucking times. It's the only way on the ceiling, not dead, out of reach.
I literally just finished watching the second episode of the Amazing Digital Circus, and, well, I have things to say. I was moved by it, in such a blend of emotion and existential horror that is rare to see. If you've watched my episode covering the first one, good, but this one will be different, in case you couldn't tell already from the cold open. This isn't a minute-by-minute analysis of the second episode of the Amazing Digital Circus. Somewhat because you've probably already seen it, but mostly because my interest lies in what the episode actually means. The horror lurking not so deep beneath the surface. And I mean that. This episode differs from the pilot, as while the existential dread and horror was more implied through the consummate scenario, as the pilot should do, the second episode used the emotional arcs of the characters to portray its horror, combined with abstract imagery, sound design, environment design, and so much more. This makes it a perfect follow-up to the pilot. Obviously, this video will spoil the story thus far, although it really does not go into detail very much at all, and will contain discussion on existential topics. If you're not comfortable with that, you may want to click off this video, or watch the episode and then come back here. Or you could just keep watching. My analytics will surely appreciate it. So, if you're ready, I think it's time we dive headfirst into another adventure in the Amazing Digital Circus. In the last video, we tackled being stuck in a simulation, and the real world plan to put you into one. But this video, and thus this episode, has a different focus. Instead, it's more than content in analyzing the very nature of not the human characters, but that of the NPCs. AI is a topic that needs little introduction, and at its very core is a very fundamental human question. What does it mean to be, well, human? The common mantra here is, I think, therefore I am. But honestly, that seems a bit outdated to me. Because what exactly does it mean to think? With further leaps in neuroscience, that answer seemingly gets further away. So today, I'd like to throw my hat into the ring. Thinking begins with a thought. Really, what thinking is a train of thoughts that are intertwined and formed based on top of each other. For example, if I think of an elephant, I'll then think of Dumbo. And when I think of Dumbo, I'll then think of Disney World. This is thinking within a closed circuit, however. The mind is capable of producing thoughts all on its own. I mean, I could just randomly think of an elephant as I did for this example, but thinking usually starts with an external factor. If I go to the zoo or see a large footprint, I'll naturally be more inclined to think of the elephant, then Dumbo, then Disney World, and, well, you get the point. This brings up an interesting question, and one that I'm not gonna really talk about in this video. Editor's note there. If thinking is a string of thoughts, then what was the first thought you ever had? It's likely that different lines of thinking are caused by different external and internal factors. So we don't want to look at this as a singular train of thought, one string of thinking I've had continuously for 24 years. However, that doesn't mean our question doesn't have merit, even past just being interesting to think about. A thought is, technically speaking, a physical phenomenon. When not entirely fully understood, the current neuroscience postures that the brain produces electronic signals with neurons communicating with each other. This creates thought on a physical level. But is this really the mind, a bunch of neuron clusters? Of course not. To me, the mind is a step above that, not entirely derived from the physical brain, yet entirely bound to it. As an infant, you are a cluster of instincts and stimuli reception. You're born with said instincts as an animal and receive stimuli from the outside environment. While I don't remember being such a young child, it is at least my belief that very young children don't have the same internal trains of thought that older kids and adults do. Rather, they have a million reactions to a million different stimuli, and naturally teach themselves how to react to them based on their instincts. They don't have nearly as many internal stimuli as adults do either. Eventually, kids are taught by some sort of guardian, at least in most cases, to get past this bare animalistic level of thinking, and are thus introduced to advanced communication. So then, what is the mind? Well, I definitely have to think more on this, but to me it operates as both the coffee grinder and the coffee filter. The beans in this scenario are stimuli, whether internal or external, which are processed through the mind to create thoughts, which is the grounded up coffee. But as my therapist says, we get to choose which thoughts we find useful, but not the actual thoughts we have. All my OCD homies can surely relate to this. So the mind grinds up the stimuli into consumable thoughts, and then the mind further filters out and compartmentalizes certain thoughts. Seems simple enough. But how does the mind form then? Everything you are is taught to you, or you are born with it. I've talked about it ad nauseum in many of my videos, particularly this one right here. But both your nature and your nurture are fundamentally out of your control. You are born in a certain location, a certain culture, and you are predisposed to certain brain phenomena, such as mental illness. Your environment then can compound with your nature and turn into something else. It turns into you. Think of it this way. Your nature is a solid piece of metal. Your genetics have determined that you will be made foundationally of a certain material, whether that be steel or copper. The nurture side then is the fire, which determines what shape you will become, what purpose the metal will serve. Will you be a chair or will you be a crowbar? It melts away your natural instincts and human condition and forms something that can be called a person, not just a human being. It's all part of the collective consciousness, which I've already also talked about ad nauseum, and have come to find that the name itself is actually pretty self-explanatory. So I feel as if I don't really have to explain it here for the millionth time. Now, how much you believe in the nurture side of the debate will ultimately determine how you feel about AI being, at least eventually, part of a people. They are a blank slate that are taught literally everything, and in its more primitive states, it stops there. Weak or narrow AI is just this. While they can perform very complex tasks, they are usually focused on a certain subject. Some for things like banking, and some for things like chess. Now, I literally just looked up and discovered these terms, so if I'm wrong about anything in this section, please let me know. I'm counting on you. But narrow AI seem to be explicitly taught to navigate a certain closed system, like a game of chess. And while they can react to stimuli, they don't quite learn the way we do. Rather, instead of their knowledge being applicable to anything, their knowledge is, well, narrow. Not able to react to the stimuli of an oncoming card while they briefly think about their next chess move. They will get hit each and every time. As well, they can understand danger in the sense that they don't want their king to be in danger. They can't apply that same concept to anything outside of the game, like said oncoming car. They lack a fundamental nature that can truly learn all on its own. General or strong AI is different though. It doesn't need human guidance to work through problems that it is unaware of, as they possess a learned core that can take lessons learned from chess and apply it to the speeding car. This is where the line between person and artificial intelligence becomes a bit blurred, as they have that core. Personally, I fail to see how strong AI is much different from regular human intelligence. These two categories and the theoretical third of superintelligence are all based on capability, but it is also functionality, and this is where another feature of the mind is brought up: memories. We are only able to learn as we do because of our memories of past successes or failures. Reactive machines generally lack this capability, but limited memory AI is able to use that stored knowledge to make new decisions. This is where most modern day AI falls under. Not quite human, but when paired with the capabilities of general AI, it's not far off. I imagine it almost as if a god, a being higher than yourself and unattainable, would be the only being you talk to. You will learn from it, but the inherent lack of advanced communication network means you can only learn so much. This is where theory of mind AI comes in, a new working level of AI where they realize the necessity of communication with other beings, especially those on their level. This is essentially how human beings developed into civilized people. Faced with the desperate need of communication to survive the natural world, they formed the collective consciousness, a network of people that constantly share ideas and develop other people. In my humblest of opinions, as a complete newbie to the world of AI, this is where the inherent difference between humans and AI rests. Communication with their own kind. True communication that builds not just logical responses, but emotional ones too. Self-awareness is a fickle thing. Are we truly self-aware? I would argue and have argued that we actually lack free will, and most are relatively unaware of that fact. But do we still, deep down, have sentience? Are we, as I argued in this video, really just video game characters? I'm not quite sure anymore. But what I think, and I literally just had this thought, is that the mantra of "I think, therefore I am" should be changed to "I understand that others think, therefore I am." We've broken down how thinking works in this video. Based on this particular interpretation of thought, AI is certainly capable of this, even narrow AI. In the simplest of terms, AI can react to stimuli, both external and internal, during a chess game. And then a physical phenomenon happens, an electronic signal happens in the computer. They then react to that stimulus. Who are we to say that this isn't an actual thought they are having? If you were to argue that this isn't, then what would you define a single thought as? Of course, general AI and limited memory AI are in this category as well. They do, at least in my humble opinion, have thoughts. But do they have a mind? Currently, I don't think so. Because the mind is not just a collection of thoughts. And we again have to look at the coffee analogy. We can compartmentalize our thoughts, not just have them. And while we used to do so based purely on the instinctual need to survive, we've actually evolved far past that in most parts of the world. We compartmentalize not based on need, but on want, desire, and most importantly, emotion. AI doesn't currently have emotion because they don't know others. They have nothing to reflect off of. I learned to be sad because I've seen my parents sad. They explained the phenomenon to me and I then understood it. The entire point of Neon Genesis Evangelion, and especially the last 2 episodes, is that you can't exist without others, because it's those others that make you realize yourself. They act as a mirror for you to see yourself and elements of them. Not even just on a developmental level, that certainly plays a part, but even a fully developed person will slowly go insane and lose themselves without some kind of external stimuli generated from the human population, whether that be a conversation or simply just listening to music. This, of course, would mean that any level of what we call self-awareness is not because we think, but it's because we feel, because we know others and understand others, because of our vast communication network we call, well, at least I call, the collective consciousness. You cannot know the human form, the shape of the soul, as Mahito would say, without seeing someone else's first. Upon seeing it, you then see your own soul. You can recognize it because you recognize that you're of the same breed as that person. I understand that others think, therefore I am. And of course, the only way we can understand others is because we sympathize and empathize, which is really just being able to correspond our emotions with theirs. Yes. That is the inherent difference between AI and human people. Emotion. Emotion that eventually leads into self-awareness. To be transparent, I went into this video thinking I would conclude with, are we all just AI or NPCs? But as I'm writing this lengthy section in one go, in real time, I've come to realize that this isn't the case, and that emotion is what leads to self-awareness. Because that is ultimately not just what we communicate with, but much more importantly, it's what we understand others with. Not only does this lead into self-awareness, but it makes us more receptive to the collective consciousness, which teaches us how to live in society, how to be people. Theory of mind AI is essentially AI that can feel emotion and understand others. Beyond that, what they call the future of AI is self-aware AI. But honestly, I don't think there is a next step there. What we are currently working on, the theory of mind AI, is the final step. Once we complete AI that recognizes emotional expressions like facial expression, tone, and body language, as well as emotion of intuitiveness and predictiveness, the very foundations of emotional reasoning, well, I think once we put them with other humans that are equally intelligent AI in an environment that fosters growth, understanding, and learning, then we will quite simply have fully realized people. AI will finally become human. I think the Amazing Digital Circus episode 2 portrayed it best. In it, Gummigoo ponders his existence. Does he truly exist? He has thoughts, sure, but he's currently being faced with the very existential nature of his own existence. And then he says something very interesting. Don't tell the lads about this. This concern Gummigoo has, this empathy, shows that he understands not just his own existence, his own self-awareness, but that he understands the emotions of his friends. And if that's not human, then I honestly don't know what is. Now, I think it's worth noting what exactly not just a thought is, but what an emotion is. If we're to think of a singular thought as a response to either external or internal stimuli, which is then parsed and compartmentalized by the mind, of which is an amalgamation of reflected memory, developed and hyperprocessed instincts, and what we've been taught, well, it's hard to say that emotion isn't just a type of thought, a subset of the very act of thinking. If it is our thoughts that allow us to, well, think, then it is our emotions that make us act, whether that be primal fear, joy, celebration, or whatever. AI can't currently feel that, but you certainly can. and you will act in accordance to your instinct, in accordance with your memories, and most of all, in accordance with what you were taught. If you were to see a bear, you'd probably run away. This, for me at least, is for 3 core reasons. Because you've been taught by your elders to run away, because you've perhaps had memories of the gruesome bear species before, because most primally, it's just your fear response to do so. Instinct, fear, and emotion. Of course, all 3 of these are reactions to both external and internal stimuli. Instinct for the external and memory and learning for the internal. The thought of run pops up, and then your body produces a reaction that says to run. So perhaps emotion isn't exactly a thought on the basis of terms, but rather is the next step, the action determined by that thought. But of course, the emotion is not literally what makes your body move. So it's probably best to think of emotion as the coffee itself. A thought occurs, the mind processes it, and the emotion is what ultimately is produced. In this way, emotion acts as the middleman between thought and immediate action, but it's still based on the same things the thought is rooted to. Does that make sense? I really, really hope that makes sense. In most cases, the stimuli are hormones, which are internal and are very much a physical thing, which is directly important to our case here, as we've already established that computers and AI are able to do most of the physical things the brain does even in the current day. But it's not simply about replicating the brain, that would just be an empty shell. It needs to be filled with organic learning, which is only achieved by, well, growing up. There's a reason why humans, and all life on Earth for that matter, isn't just born fully developed. My theoretical wife in this scenario is not just giving birth to a grown woman in a suit and tie. Okay, this is starting to get a bit weird. I don't even want kids. Moving on. They need to organically develop. You can't just dump programming into them right off the bat. Neuron connections take time. Learning takes time. You can be born with natural instinct, sure, but that doesn't mean you're a person yet, or even an animal. You are a child, one that is surely never going to actually be self-aware. An organic emotional framework, most importantly, takes a very long time to develop. A baby can cry, sure, but they're never going to truly feel sad or despair. That is an emotion, something only understood after interacting with others of their kind for a long time. This is what it seems like is the problem with current AI research. Impatience. We know of the concept of bottom-up AI, essentially a program that learns complex systems starting slow and, well, growing up. This isn't some new groundbreaking science I'm discovering here. But of course, this takes a lot of time to happen. It isn't really necessary for the current use of AI in our society. We just want more self-checkouts. This is something I adore about the anime community's dead horse, Sword Art Online. Ah, my first ever video. What great memories. In the 3rd season, Alicization, we have the character of Alice, a bottom-up AI program that quite literally grows up in a simulation. She starts as a child, then a teenager, to eventually become a young adult. If we truly want to create human-adjacent AI, this is what we have to do. Whether that be in a simulated world like with Alice, or robots in the real world, they have to interact and slowly learn in order to become just like us. People. Of course, there are a lot of moral dilemmas here, but various media projects have tackled that so much that I honestly feel like it'd be pointless to talk about. Maybe I'll make a movie about it or something. Well, it's complicated. The man has an IQ of like 180 or something close to that. I don't exactly want to go against the big boys in this one, but I also kind of do, because I'm an egotistical person. So let's break this down. Descartes' I think phrase comes from the fact that the entire world could literally be an elaborate illusion from some sort of evil demon, where nothing is actually there and 2 + 2 doesn't even equal 4. Yet the fact that you are able to doubt your reality means that in some form, you must exist. I doubt, therefore I am. You could stay up all night pondering existential crisis as he did, yet the very act of doing so means that you exist, even if it's just a brain in a vat. It's a grossly simplified version of his meditations, but I think it serves to get the point across. So was the title just clickbait? Do I really have a problem with what could be argued to be the very foundation of modern philosophy? Well, kinda. A child does not have such a thought, because a child does not truly possess self-awareness, at least not nearly to the degree that me and you do. Unless you, the viewer, are 5 years old and still somehow following this video, well, congrats on that Harvard graduation a couple years, but I doubt this is the case. So does a child just not exist? Can we as an outside observer be certain that they do? If we are to doubt this, then they just become another component of a false, bizarre reality, at least potentially. Of course, a child has thoughts, but they don't have the same self-aware thought of literally doubting reality. So they do think, but just not exactly in the same way Descartes was actually talking about. Of course, any sane person is going to say that a child does, in fact, exist. Even further than that, Descartes' primary mission was to find the primary source of knowledge, the innate essence we naturally have as a human being. This isn't something you just can't not be born with under his definitions. Yet I can't see a world where a child is actually born with that essence of self-awareness, at least not enough to doubt reality. Now, it's been left ambiguous as to whether or not Descartes viewed his argument as, well, an argument, or as a natural intuition. In this case, the major argument would be all beings that doubt must exist, and the minor argument being that I doubt, and therefore, in conclusion, I exist. The original text doesn't quite frame it in that way, however, and instead postures that it is an intuition that one is simply born with. In later interviews, he did acknowledge that the argument may just be subconscious, but I'll let other people who are more versed in the topic cover that one. But I'd still argue that this intuition is certainly non-existent and not something we were born with. No. Instead, the capability of doubt is something that is developed over time, that is learned from watching other people and animals and feeling their emotions. It isn't necessarily innate, and this can be seen with children that are raised outside of normal society, like in an attic without any social interaction whatsoever. They don't seem to be capable of true self-awareness, and guess what? It takes some time to be able to develop that afterwards. And I think you see where I'm going with this. Limited memory AI, in my estimations, is in the level of the most mathematical newborn ever birthed. And while they can solve a lot of problems, they have no self-awareness as to why they're even solving the problem in the first place. That why is crucial, as the question is based around the same concept that doubt is. Theory of mind AI, then, is a child, able to correspond emotions with others, but not really being self-aware. This would mean that bottom-up theory of mind AI, and only them, have the potential to become a person. Children are not born with an essence, but rather the potential to develop one. And under the right circumstances, I see theory of mind AI to have that same exact potential. You are free to disagree with me on that, but that's just how I see things. That's what I think. That's just a theory. A game theory. This is why I believe we should change the probably mistranslated phrase of I think, therefore I am, to I understand, others think, therefore I am. I base this off of how we even develop, and how others act as a mirror for us to have any semblance of self-awareness for ourselves. That we are not born with a doubtful essence, but that we develop that over many years. In discussing the concept of AI, we come to realize this. In discussing artificial intelligence, we see the potential for something undeniably born with a core essence to still doubt just as we do. I understand there are a lot of flaws in my theory here. I'm not aware of those flaws, I'm really more just assuming there are some, putting that statement out there. In order to minimize the seriousness of which you take this video and thus reduce the amount of flack that probably will get for it. Ha! I beat you to the punch. Okay, one flaw I can see here is that through Descartes' logic, the only person you can be certain exists is yourself. So you probably want to be amongst the sane people that state that a child indeed exists. However, my response would be that since I at least believe you need the existence of others to exist yourself on a fundamental level, that when you doubt that others exist, potentially recognize them as nothing more than part of the illusion, I don't even think you would be able to exist, but I digress. All in all, my only reason for making this video is because I found it to be fun, which is generally my personal stance on philosophy as a whole. Thinking is just simply fun. Of course, it has moral and ethical implications, but that's just not why I'm in it for myself. At least for the most part. I did fail the philosophy minor after all. If you want a much more detailed analysis of Descartes, I think therefore I am, I'd recommend watching Alex O'Connor's video on the subject, which will of course be linked in the description. Next video on the chopping block should be a Hellblade 2 analysis. I hope you will look forward to it. Oh yeah, and the Amazing Digital Circus episode 2 was really good. Bye now, and as always, thank you for watching.